Focus on Ports, brought to you by Transnet National Ports Authority.
It's a well-known fact that Intra African trade is currently at very low levels. The continent's improving fortunes mean that trade is bound to grow. This will mean efficient freight infrastructure needs to be developed to take advantage of this growth. On Focus on Ports, we will track South Africa's response to this market demand. We'll also be looking at the broader implications for the freight industry as South Africa embarks on an ambitious 300 billion rand capital expansion program over the next 7 years. Now, there's a lot of excitement in the corridors of the Transnet National Ports Authority as the organization prepares to be a top-tier logistics provider. Here with me is newly appointed General Manager for Ports Operations, Mr. Herbert Msagala. Herbert, thank you very much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lionel.
All right, you heard the saying, come at the man, come at the moment. You've been part of the Transnet operations for the last more than 12 years, 10 years, and you've just recently been appointed as GM of Ports Operations. Tell us about your journey through Transnet and where you cut your teeth. I see you started out in marketing and sales, and today you are where you are. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I thank you for having me in your show. I started with Transnet around about 1997 on the engineering side of the business, which is on the rail sector. And through the years, I grew up through the marketing side, servicing the customers and the industries on the container and automotive. And I was instrumental in around about 2000 when I joined the operations of Transnet, which is Transnet Freight Rail, and which recently I've been appointed on the port sector to transform the port system of South Africa.
All right, so that is your key performance areas, to transform the port system, and it's an exciting time, as I said in my introduction. There's a major CAPEX program that's underway, but in terms of your key performance areas of expanding the ports, at least the efficiency of the ports, what can you say about what you will do and your vision going forward for the next 7 years?
As you know, that the port system is a gateway, it's an economic gateway of the country. It ensures that South Africa trade internationally and also through Sub-Sahara. Now, part of my role is to ensure that I facilitate in terms of creating high, effective and efficient port system. The most important focus area again is to ensure that we create capacity ahead of demand. As you know, that as the port system, in terms of capacity, we need to ensure that the port is geared up in terms of future demand. And the third one, which is the most critical one, is to create opportunity for new players in the port system, which predominantly the new players were locked out on the system. And lastly is to ensure that we create opportunity for job creation and skills development, which is one of the bone of contention for the country in terms of the alleviating poverty and unemployment and stimulate the economic growth of the country.
I'm glad you picked it up about the job creation. The new growth path in South Africa has embarked on, coupled with the infrastructure investment that President Zuma spoke about at the State of the Nation in February this year. The Transnet Group has a market demand strategy that's to the tune of 300 billion rand. That's a lot of money. You are responding to some market demand, hence the name. Explain what those market demands are at the moment.
If you look at the Transnet 300 billion investment plan, really the case for change was to say, how do we stimulate the economy of South Africa in alleviating unemployment, poverty, and ensure that we grow the economy. The marketing demand strategy touched base on the following key focus area. One, as I've indicated, is opportunity to create meaningful jobs. We are anticipating that through the 7-year program, we'll be able to create 15,000 jobs, direct jobs, and many more indirect jobs. And we are looking at creating opportunity to grow traffic from road to rail. And we are looking at also improving in our operations across the network of Transnet, both port and rail infrastructure. And most importantly, we are looking at ensuring that we create capacity ahead of demand in growing the economic sector of South Africa. So really the marketing demand strategy, it stimulates the economic growth of South Africa in ensuring that it supports government in its initiative of alleviating poverty and improving unemployment.
All right, let's look at where we are right now. Obviously, the system has been in place for the last 158 years and more. In the last 30 years, there hasn't been any new investment into infrastructure investment, particularly when it comes to freight services in South Africa. For the last 30 years, Transnet has been involved in mostly maintenance operations. What is different between this CAPEX and CAPEX of previous years?
Yeah, you would recall that when our Honorable President announced that we were going to invest 300 billion for the next 7 years, one of the key points that we really want to target was to grow our volumes on the iron ore sector from the range of 60 million tons to 80 million tons, and our coal sector from 68 million tons to 98 million tons, and our general freight business from 80 million tons to 170 million tons. We would not be able to do that if we don't unlock the capacity. The capacity as it stands today, we are challenged with the aging infrastructure, aging rolling stock on the rail sector, and specifically on the ports system where I serve at the moment. If you look at the current port system and what they have been doing, the current draft, which is the draft is the depth in which you can allow the vessels to come into the country. The draft only allow us at the moment to accommodate vessels that can take on average 13.5, which is translated to 9,000 TEUs. But if you look at internationally, currently internationally, most of the international port system, they are accommodating vessels that can take 12 to 18,000 TEUs, which require a draft of 15 meters. So that on its own, it shows that we are behind in terms of ensuring that we create demand ahead of
But let's not
capacity.
forget that the port of Durban is the busiest port in the Southern Hemisphere. Even though we're behind the curve, we are holding our own as a country. But obviously, as you say, there needs to be some improvements. Let's look a bit further. This infrastructure investment program, the CAPEX program that is to the tune of 300 billion, we'll be looking at road, freight, as well as port. And I'd like to zero in on the ports, which is your responsibility. You cut your teeth doing rail, so you know the problems there. But what excites you most about the kind of attention that ports are going to get now under the current CAPEX?
Yeah. If you look at the 300 billion CAPEX plan, the 200 of it will be spent on the freight rail.
Don't you wish you were still with freight rail?
No, it's being a leader in Transnet, it's an opportunity to ensure that...
Because they're getting the bulk of the money, 200 billion is going to where you were before you came to the ports.
In fact, in terms of the supply chain, you will notice that the ports becomes the key.
Right.
So I think I'm strategically positioned where it matters the most, because if the port is not efficient and effective in its operation, it can also not... we cannot reap the benefits of spending on a rail sector. If the
So what excites you most about?
What excites me the most is that I will be playing the role first of integrating the port rail interface, ensuring that as we lay down the investment, there is a alignment in terms of the rail infrastructure and the port infrastructure. The second most important thing is to make sure that I collaborate with the shipping lines, the community, the labor, in ensuring that we create a port system that is effective and efficient. And what again sort of push one forward is bring up new opportunity. We recently launched the cruise terminals in terms of bringing new entrants in the port systems. And in the coming weeks, we will be launching the port festivals, which is another way of introducing communities in our port system and ensuring that we educate South Africa in terms of what is the role of the port and how can the port system unlock the economy of of South Africa.
So this CAPEX implementation is over a 7-year period. And at the end of the 7-year period, Transnet will be transformed into a top-tier logistics company. Paint us a picture of where we will be in 7 years' time in terms of how we stack up internationally, how we compete with other service providers on the globe.
Yeah. Just zooming in terms of, let's just look at holistically. Currently, we have our main export lines, the coal line and the ore line, will be amongst one of the best export line. We currently run the 342 wagon train on the export line, which is still the largest world production train. So in terms of, if you look at the long term, we will be running at 82 million tons on the iron ore and 98 on the ore line, which will be amongst the world-class rail sector. If you look at the port sector, we currently, our limiting factor, as I indicated, is the size of the draft in terms of accommodating, if I may call it, the biggest ships. Recently, one of our shipping lines was announcing that they will be launching a 18,000 TEU, which will require 15-meter draft. So once our investment plan is completed, we will be amongst the world port system that is able to compete globally in all spheres. We'll be able to handle the bigger vessels. We'll be having a well seamless, reliable freight system. And now, as we know that we all do this in the interest of the customers. The customers want bigger vessels, and they want to make sure those vessels turn as quickly as possible. That is why one of my roles to ensure that efficiency of the port system is to turn the vessels as quickly as possible.
Fantastic. Now let's talk a little bit about the capacity. You touched on it in your answer now, just now, and you spoke about bringing in bigger vessels. One of the plans that the port operations have is to transform the old Durban International Airport into a complementary like harbour. How is that going to help improve capacity in the Durban port?
Yeah. We have in TNPA a very dedicated team that looks at the almost 50-year plan. In our short term, we have started by ensuring that we do what we call the deepening of the berth in Durban, making sure that our draft can move from 12.5 meters to 15 meters. That is just to accommodate, if I may call, the standard vessels that are carrying about 9,000 TEUs. Now, as we see the outlooks and the growth of the economy, we anticipate that the container volumes are going to grow and automotive volumes are going to grow. That on its own is going to require more berthing capacity. In order to deal with those demands, we have identified that in around about 2015, we'll run short of capacity. That is why we have identified the Durban dig-out port as one of capacity enablement to ensure that we can capture the demand from the customer. Okay. We are currently in the feasibility study in terms of the DIA port, in terms of identifying how should the layout look like, and we will, as soon as we finalize our feasibility study, we will be going on open tender to the public.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that and other issues when we come back after the break. We're going for a short commercial break. We talk more about how the Transnet National Ports Authority will be upgrading its ports around the country, and we'll also be looking at intra-African trade. Stay tuned.